The classroom fell dead silent, so quiet that even the hum of the fluorescent lights sounded loud. "Say it again," Ms. Karen Whitfield snapped, her heels clicking sharply against the linoleum as she stepped closer to Jamal Carter's desk. Her lips curled into a thin, superior smile. "Tell the class what you claimed your father does." Jamal swallowed hard. His hands trembled as they rested on the edge of his notebook, the paper beneath them crumpling slightly. 30 pairs of eyes burned into him, some curious, some amused, some already convinced he was lying. My dad is in the army," Jamal said quietly. "He's a general." A beat, then laughter exploded across the room. "Oh my God," a boy in the back snorted. "A general, sure, bro." Ms. Whitfield laughed too, but hers was colder, sharper, the kind of laugh that didn't just mock you but stripped you bare. "A general," she repeated, shaking her head. "Jamal, do you have any idea how ridiculous that sounds?" Jamal's face burned. He stared down at his desk, wishing, praying he could disappear into the wood grain. "Stand up," Ms. Whitfield ordered. His chair scraped loudly as he rose, knees weak. "Class," she said, folding her arms, "this is exactly why honesty matters. Some people think they can just say anything to feel important." She leaned down until her face was inches from his. "Let me guess," she whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear, "your dad also flies private jets and has his own tank, right?" The class erupted again. Jamal's throat tightened. "No, ma'am," he said, voice cracking. "I'm not lying." Ms. Whitfield straightened and rolled her eyes. "Oh, Jamal, you expect me to believe a black kid from the South Side has a father who's a 4-star general in the United States Army?" A few students gasped. Others shifted uncomfortably. But no one spoke up. Jamal's fists clenched at his sides. "My dad said telling the truth matters," he said softly, "even when people don't believe you." That was when her smile vanished. "Enough," Ms. Whitfield snapped. "I will not have you disrupting my class with these fantasies." She turned toward the door. "I already called the administration, and since you insisted on dragging your so-called father into this," the door creaked open. A shadow fell across the classroom floor. Ms. Whitfield froze mid-sentence. Principal stepped in first, his face pale. Behind him, boots, polished black boots gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Then a sharply pressed army uniform came into view. The room stopped breathing. Medals covered the man's chest, rows upon rows, catching the light. His posture was rigid, commanding, his face calm, unreadable, and on his shoulders 4 silver stars. Jamal's head snapped up. "Dad," he whispered. Ms. Whitfield's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The man took one step forward. "Mrs. Whitfield," he said evenly, his voice deep and controlled, "I'm here because you accused my son of lying." The silence was so heavy it felt like it might crush the room. Ms. Whitfield's face drained of color. She stared at the insignia on his uniform, at the stars, at the nameplate, then back at Jamal. Her lips trembled. The laughter was gone. The smugness vanished. The room that moments ago had been a stage for humiliation was now a courtroom, and judgment had just walked in. But before we see how this ends, let me ask you something, question of the day. Have you ever been judged or humiliated because someone didn't believe your truth? Tell us in the comments and let us know where you're watching from today. But before we see how this ends, let's go back to where this story truly began, 3 years earlier. Jamal Carter woke up every morning at 5:30 a.m. sharp, not because an alarm clock demanded it, but because discipline had quietly become part of who he was. The small apartment on the south side of Columbus, Georgia, was usually still dark at that hour. The walls were thin, the floors creaked, and the heater rattled louder than it worked in winter. Jamal shared the 2-bedroom space with his mother, Denise, and his little sister, Nia. His father wasn't home most of the year, but his presence was everywhere. A neatly folded American flag sat on the top shelf of the living room cabinet. A framed photo of Jamal at age 6, sitting on broad shoulders beneath a camouflage cap, rested beside it. And above Jamal's bed, taped carefully so it wouldn't fall, was a handwritten note. "Character is what you do when no one is watching." Dad Jamal read it every morning. He slid quietly out of bed, careful not to wake Nia, and pulled on his hoodie. In the kitchen, his mom was already up, packing lunches before heading to her shift at the hospital. "Morning, soldier," Denise said softly, smiling as she handed him a peanut butter sandwich. Jamal smiled back. "Morning, Mom." He never told anyone at school this part, but mornings were his favorite time, before the noise, before the stares, before the whispers. School wasn't easy for Jamal. He was one of the only black students in the advanced program at Ridgeway Preparatory Academy, a school known for its standards and traditions. He'd earned his spot there through test scores and scholarships, not connections, and some people never let him forget that. He was quiet, polite, always raised his hand before speaking, always did his homework, and still it wasn't enough. Teachers mispronounced his name even after years. Students assumed he was there on a diversity scholarship. And whenever parents visited the school, Jamal noticed how security guards watched him just a little more closely than others. But Jamal endured it. Because his dad had taught him how. His father, General Marcus Carter, didn't raise his voice much. He didn't need to. When he spoke, you listened. And when he wasn't home, often gone for months on classified assignments, his words still carried weight. People will doubt you, Marcus once told him over a crackling video call from overseas. Not because of who you are, but because of who they are. Jamal had asked him once, "Does it ever stop?" Marcus paused before answering. "No, but you get stronger." Jamal took those words seriously, which was why this day, the day everything went wrong, mattered so much. It was career presentation day. Each student was required to stand in front of the class and talk about their parent or guardian's job. It counted as 20% of their final grade in social studies. For Jamal, this wasn't just an assignment. It was a chance. A chance to finally say out loud what he'd been taught his entire life to keep quiet. His father had always been clear. Never use my rank to make yourself bigger than others. So Jamal didn't brag. He didn't correct people when they assumed his dad was in logistics or worked for the government. He didn't wear military gear or talk about bases or medals, but the assignment required honesty. And honesty meant telling the truth, even if it made people uncomfortable. That morning, Jamal hesitated before slipping the folded paper into his backpack. His presentation was simple. No photos, no flashy slides, just facts. My father serves in the United States Army. He believes leadership means responsibility. He believes in service before self. That was it. Denise noticed the worry in his eyes as he stood by the door. "You okay, baby?" she asked. Jamal nodded. "Yeah, just nervous." She hugged him tightly. "Your dad would be proud of you no matter what." That should have been enough. But deep down, Jamal already felt it, that tight feeling in his chest, like something was waiting to snap. At school, the tension followed him. Ms. Karen Whitfield had been Jamal's social studies teacher for 2 years. She was known for being tough but fair. At least that's how she described herself. To Jamal, she was something else. She often singled him out, questioned his answers more harshly, corrected him publicly, smiled thinly when he spoke. She never yelled, she didn't have to. Disappointment spoke louder than anger ever could. When Jamal walked into her classroom that morning, she glanced at him over her glasses. "Presentation order is alphabetical," she said crisply. "Carter, you'll be going today." A few students turned around to look at him. Jamal felt his stomach drop. All day long, the words replayed in his head. He rehearsed quietly during lunch. He ignored the snickers when a boy named Trevor said, "What, you gonna say your dad's the president or something?" Jamal didn't respond. He just waited, because what was at stake wasn't just a grade. It was his dignity, his future, and the one promise he'd made to himself: never lie about who you are just to make others comfortable. When the bell finally rang for social studies, Jamal walked into the classroom with slow, measured steps. He took his seat. He placed his paper neatly on the desk. Ms. Whitfield stood at the front, clipboard in hand. "Let's begin," she said. "Remember, accuracy matters." Jamal swallowed. He had no idea that by the end of this period, his life and hers would never be the same. The air in room 214 felt heavier than usual. Jamal noticed it the moment he sat down, the kind of tension that crawls under your skin before anything actually happens. Ms. Whitfield stood at the front of the classroom, flipping through her clipboard with sharp, impatient movements. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes scanned the room like she was already disappointed. "All right," she said. "Let's get through these presentations efficiently." One by one, students stood. "My mom's a dentist. My dad owns a car dealership. My parents run a real estate firm." Each presentation was met with polite nods, mild interest, the occasional follow-up question. Ms. Whitfield smiled. She praised confidence. She complimented posture. Then she called Jamal's name. "Carter, you're up." A few heads turned. Someone whispered. A chair scraped. Jamal stood slowly, his paper trembling in his hand despite his effort to keep it still. He walked to the front of the room, aware of every step, every breath. 30 students stared at him. Ms. Whitfield crossed her arms. "Go ahead," she said flatly. Jamal took a breath. "My father serves in the United States Army," he began. "He believes leadership means taking responsibility for others. He taught me that integrity matters more than recognition." Ms. Whitfield raised an eyebrow. "He's currently stationed overseas," Jamal continued, "and his role involves strategic planning and—" "Hold on," Ms. Whitfield interrupted. The class stilled. "Strategic planning," she repeated slowly. "That's quite a big phrase," Jamal nodded. Yes, ma'am, she tilted her head. And what exactly is your father's position, Jamal? Here it was. He's a general, Jamal said. A 4-star general. The words hadn't even settled before the reaction came, snickers, whispering. A sharp laugh from the back of the room. Ms. Whitfield let the noise continue. She didn't quiet the class. She didn't correct them. Instead, she smiled. A 4-star general, she said, repeating it like a joke she was savoring. You're sure about that? Yes, ma'am, she set her clipboard down slowly. Jamal, do you understand how rare that rank is? Yes. There are fewer than 54-star generals in the entire country at any given time, she said. Do you expect us to believe that your father is one of them? Jamal felt his face grow hot. I'm just telling the truth. Ms. Whitfield laughed softly, cruelly. Class, she said, turning to the students, this is a perfect example of why we fact-check. A few students laughed louder now. Trevor shook his head. Man's wild, he muttered. Jamal's chest tightened. I have his ID, Jamal said suddenly. I can show you. Oh, no, Ms. Whitfield cut him off. We're not playing show and tell with fake credentials. That stung more than the laughter. She stepped closer. You know, Jamal, I've taught here for 15 years. I've had children of doctors, judges, even a senator once. She leaned in. But never, not once, has a 4-star general sent his child here without any record, any acknowledgement, any mention. The implication was clear. People like you don't belong to people like that. Jamal's hands clenched. My dad doesn't like attention. Ms. Whitfield scoffed. Of course he doesn't. She turned to the class again. This presentation is supposed to reflect reality, not aspirations. The word cut deep. Sit down, she ordered. We'll discuss consequences later. Jamal didn't move. I said sit down, she repeated louder now. I didn't lie, Jamal said, his voice shaking but firm. The room went quiet. Ms. Whitfield's eyes hardened. Defiance, too. She picked up her phone. I'm calling the office. And since you want to involve your general father so badly, she looked straight at him. Let's see if he shows. The humiliation was complete. Students stared. Some looked uncomfortable now. Others looked entertained. No one spoke for him. No one defended him. Jamal returned to his seat slowly, every step heavy. His ears rang. His heart pounded so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it. Ms. Whitfield stepped into the hallway, phone pressed to her ear. From the doorway, she said loudly, Yes, this is Corinne Whitfield. I have a student making false claims about military leadership. I think we need parental verification immediately. Jamal stared at his desk, fighting tears. Minutes passed. Each one felt like an hour, then the door opened. The principal stepped in, his expression tight. Behind him, boots, polished, black, military. The classroom fell into the same stunned silence we saw before, and Jamal knew. He didn't smile, he didn't stand. He just whispered, Dad. Because after a lifetime of being doubted, the truth had finally arrived, and it wasn't here to be quiet. No one moved, not a single student breathed. The man in uniform stepped fully into the classroom, the door closing softly behind him with a final click that echoed like a gavel striking wood. The principal stood stiffly at his side, hands clasped, eyes darting nervously toward Ms. Whitfield, who had gone completely still. The general's presence changed the air itself. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Every medal on his chest told a story. Every crease in his uniform spoke of discipline. Authority radiated from him not as arrogance, but as certainty. Ms. Whitfield swallowed. See, can I help you? She asked, her tone suddenly thin, brittle. The man looked at her not unkindly, but with a steady gaze that saw everything. I'm General Marcus Carter, he said. United States Army. A murmur rippled through the class. Ms. Whitfield's face lost what little color it had left. I was informed, the general continued, that my son was accused of lying publicly. He turned his head slightly. Jamal. Jamal looked up, eyes shining. Yes, sir. Marcus Carter walked to his son's desk and placed a firm, reassuring hand on his shoulder. Jamal straightened instinctively, years of habit kicking in. You told the truth? Marcus asked quietly. Yes, sir. The general nodded once. Then he turned back to Ms. Whitfield. What exactly did my son lie about? He asked. Ms. Whitfield opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. He claimed that you are a 4-star general, she said weakly. The general glanced down at his uniform as if checking something. I am. Silence slammed into the room. A student in the front row whispered, Oh my God. Ms. Whitfield's knees visibly shook. I didn't mean, she stammered. It's just that statistically speaking, statistics don't determine truth, the general said calmly. Facts do. The principal cleared his throat. Mrs. Whitfield, perhaps we should step outside. No, General Carter said, his voice still level but now unmistakably firm. This happened in front of the class. It will be addressed here. He faced the students. How many of you heard my son being laughed at? Hands hesitated, then slowly, reluctantly, several rose. How many of you heard his integrity questioned? More hands. General Carter nodded. Good. Because leadership begins with accountability. Ms. Whitfield's breath came shallow. General, if I offended you. You didn't offend me, he said. You humiliated my child. That landed like a blow. You didn't verify, you didn't ask respectfully. You assumed, and when you assumed, you used your authority to shame. He looked around the room. My son has been taught to respect educators. He has been taught to be humble about who he is and where he comes from. His gaze returned to Ms. Whitfield. And today that humility was used against him. Tears welled in Jamal's eyes, not from pain, but from relief. The principal stepped forward. General Carter, we take this very seriously. Mrs. Whitfield's conduct will be reviewed immediately. Good, the general replied, because this isn't just about Jamal. Ms. Whitfield's voice cracked. I didn't know, she whispered. The general's eyes softened just a fraction. No, he said, you didn't want to know. The room remained frozen as the weight of the moment settled. For the first time that day, Jamal wasn't small. He wasn't doubted. He wasn't alone. The truth had spoken, and it had a uniform, 4 stars, and a voice that would not be ignored. The silence didn't break all at once. It fractured, slowly, unevenly, as reality began to sink in. Ms. Whitfield stood frozen at the front of the classroom, her authority evaporated, her clipboard hanging uselessly at her side. The same students who had laughed minutes earlier now avoided her eyes. Some stared at Jamal with awe, others with guilt. The principal exhaled, straightening his tie as though bracing himself for impact. General Carter, he said carefully, on behalf of Ridgeway Preparatory Academy, I want to offer my deepest apologies to Jamal and to your family. Marcus Carter nodded once. Apologies are a start, he said. Actions matter more. He turned slightly toward Jamal. Son, would you step outside with me for a moment? Jamal rose, legs still shaky, and followed his father into the hallway. The door closed behind them, muting the classroom murmurs. For the first time since the confrontation began, Jamal let his shoulders drop. I'm sorry, he said quickly. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Marcus turned to him, surprised. Trouble? Jamal stared at the floor. If I'd just kept quiet. His father placed both hands gently on Jamal's shoulders and knelt so they were eye to eye. Listen to me, Marcus said firmly. You did nothing wrong. You told the truth with respect. That takes courage. Jamal's eyes filled. She made me feel like I was crazy. Marcus nodded slowly. That's what unchecked power does, and that's why we confront it. Inside the classroom, the situation was unraveling fast. The principal faced Ms. Whitfield, his voice low but unmistakably tense. Karen, he said, I'm placing you on immediate administrative leave. Her head snapped up. What? Effective now, he continued. Your conduct today violated district policy, professional conduct, discrimination standards, and student dignity protections. The class collectively inhaled. You can't be serious, Ms. Whitfield said, her voice rising. This was a misunderstanding. The principal's eyes hardened. You accused a student of lying based on your own assumptions. You allowed public ridicule. You used language that multiple witnesses found inappropriate. He gestured around the room. This is not a misunderstanding. Ms. Whitfield's bravado crumbled. I've given 15 years to this school. And today, he replied, you undermined everything this institution stands for. She sank into a chair, stunned. Moments later, Marcus and Jamal returned. The general addressed the room one final time. My son doesn't need special treatment, he said. He needs fairness, the same fairness every child deserves. He looked directly at Ms. Whitfield. I hope you reflect on what authority means, he said quietly. Because real leadership lifts, it doesn't belittle. Ms. Whitfield couldn't meet his gaze. Jamal felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Relief, validation, strength. The principal cleared his throat again. Jamal, your presentation grade will be reassessed by a review panel, and you're excused for the rest of the day. Jamal nodded. Thank you, sir. As they walked down the hallway, students peeked out of classrooms. Whispers followed them, not mocking this time, but reverent. Was that really his dad? 4-star general? Dang, outside, sunlight flooded the entranceway. Jamal squinted, breathing deeply as if he'd just surfaced from deep water. I didn't want it to be like that, he said quietly. Marcus smiled gently. I know, but sometimes truth walks in loud whether we want it to or not. That evening, Denise cried when she heard the story, half in anger, half in pride. Nia hugged Jamal like he was a superhero, and the next morning something unexpected happened. An email went out to every parent and student at Ridgeway Preparatory Academy. Subject: commitment to respect and accountability. It announced Ms. Whitfield's suspension pending investigation. It outlined new training requirements for staff. It reaffirmed the school's commitment to dignity, equity, and respect. But that wasn't all. The school invited General Marcus Carter to speak at an assembly about leadership, humility, and truth. When Jamal sat in the auditorium days later listening to his father speak, he didn't feel small anymore. He felt seen. After the assembly, students approached him not to laugh, but to apologize. "I'm sorry I laughed," one said. "I didn't know," another whispered. Jamal accepted each apology quietly, because redemption wasn't about revenge, it was about growth. And justice, real justice, had finally been served 1 year later. The sun rose gently over Ridgeway Preparatory Academy, casting long shadows across the freshly repainted brick walls. The campus looked the same on the surface, but everything beneath had changed. So had Jamal Carter. He walked through the front gates with an easy confidence now, backpack slung over one shoulder, his stride relaxed but purposeful. He had grown taller, broader too, but more than that, something inside him had settled. The doubt that once crept into his chest when adults questioned him was gone. In its place was certainty. Jamal wasn't invisible anymore, not because his father was a 4-star general, but because Jamal had learned his own voice mattered. After the incident, Ridgeway changed in ways no one had expected. New teachers came in. Equity training wasn't just a formality, it became policy with teeth. Students were encouraged to speak up, to challenge respectfully, to report misconduct without fear. And Jamal thrived. He joined the debate team. He became a peer mentor for younger students who felt out of place. He stood at assemblies and spoke not about his father's rank, but about truth, dignity, and courage. "Respect," he told a room full of students once, "isn't about who your parents are, it's about how you treat people when you think no one important is watching." The room had erupted in applause. At home, life felt lighter. His father was still deployed often, still carrying the weight of national responsibility. But when he was home, the two of them ran together in the mornings, talked late into the night, and shared a quiet understanding forged in that classroom. "You handled that better than most adults I know," Marcus said one evening, watching Jamal finish homework. Jamal smiled. "You taught me." Denise had picked up extra certifications at the hospital. She was promoted to nurse supervisor. Nia started middle school, loud, confident, fearless, and Ms. Whitfield. Her name was rarely spoken anymore. She did not return to Ridgeway. According to district records, she resigned after the investigation concluded. Mandatory bias training followed. Her teaching license was suspended for a year, contingent on completion of professional remediation. Some said she learned from it. Others said she never did. But Jamal no longer carried her shadow. On the anniversary of the incident, Jamal stood in the same classroom, room 214, now under a different teacher. On the wall hung a new poster, "Integrity first, respect always." Jamal paused, taking it in. A year ago, he had stood here humiliated. Today, he stood whole, because one moment, one act of truth had changed the direction of his life forever. And here is the lesson this story leaves us with: never confuse humility with weakness. Never mistake silence for ignorance. And never judge someone's truth by how uncomfortable it makes you feel. You never know who someone truly is until you give them the respect they deserve. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own worth, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful, real-life inspired stories that restore faith in justice, courage, and humanity. Because truth always walks in eventually. And when it does, it deserves to be heard.